In the early 1960s, Boston, Massachusetts was terrorized by a serial killer under the alias the Boston Strangler. The Strangler's presence was marked by the brutal violation and murders of 13 women between the ages of 19 and 85. Women in Boston feared for their lives as efforts to locate the criminal responsible remained futile.
I was working with 3 other detectives, 2 from Boston and a lieutenant detective from the state police. We were all working out of the State House, and we were called the Boston Strangler Squad. It was astonishing to me the different ways that detectives would become suspicious of an individual, or people in the community would become suspicious and label somebody a possible killer, a suspicious person for the stranglings. There was nothing scientific, there was nothing like I envisioned police work to be.
The killer abused the confidence of women, charming his way into their homes, and then brutally molesting and strangling them. The Strangler's first victim was found on June 14, 1962. 56-year-old Anna Slacers was sexually molested and strangled with a cord from her own bathroom. 12 other appalling murders followed, all attributed to the Boston Strangler. Mary Mullen, 85. Nina Nichols, 68. Helen Blake, 65. Ida Erga, 75. Jane Sullivan, 67. Sophie Clark, 19. Patricia Bissett, 23. Mary Brown, 69. Beverly Simmons, 23. Evelyn Corbin, 58. Joanne Graff, 23. Mary Sullivan, 19. Growing up in Chelsea, Massachusetts, Albert Desalvo had a troubled childhood. When Albert was a child, his father brought home prostitutes and forced Albert to watch as they had intercourse. This abuse took its toll on Albert, and at age 12 he was sent to a correctional facility. This was just the beginning. Repeatedly sent back for various crimes, Desalvo fell into a self-destructive pattern. In 1964, Desalvo was sent to Westboro State Psychiatric Hospital and prison after a woman came to the police with claims of an attempted rape. The police then arrested Desalvo based on her description of her attacker, and soon after, hundreds of other women came forward with claims of rape. Desalvo committed a total of 300 rapes under the alias the Green Man. On September of 1965, Albert Desalvo stepped forward as the Boston Strangler. Confessing to his inmate George Nasser, Desalvo claimed responsibility for all 13 murders. In light of his confession, the investigation ended. Since Desalvo was already in prison for previous crimes he committed, his confession never went to trial. He was sent to Bridgewater State Hospital, a prison and mental institute. He was later transferred to Walpole State Prison, a higher security area, after escaping from Bridgewater. However, since that 1965 confession, there has been much speculation as to whether or not Desalvo actually committed these crimes.
They never had a lick of evidence in any way, shape, or form to put him with any of the stranglers. Not one.
At the time, the police were eager to close the case due to public distress caused by the crimes. Several psychiatrists were confused by the differing ages of the victims. Some claimed that Desalvo's murders were driven by a mother fixation, but this did not align with the murders of 5 women in their late teens or early 20s. Furthermore, esteemed criminal profiler Robert Resser believes that the differing behavioral patterns in each murder varied so extremely that it was impossible for all of the crimes to have been committed by a single person. When Desalvo confessed, it was much easier to blame him for every incident in order to end the public fear than to thoroughly examine the confession to determine its validity. The Boston Stranglers, a book by Susan Kelly, also explains that this killing spree could not have been the work of one man, and that Albert Desalvo may not have even been involved at all. Gerald Posner, an investigative journalist, believes that the information Desalvo gave in his confession could have been obtained from another source. But what could the motive be for this seemingly false confession?
He would never get out, and he was promised a lot of money to do a book, and this here on himself and everything and on the Stranglers. And That should be the answer as to why he confessed.
George Nassar turned Desalvo into the police and therefore received a large reward offered for this information. Coincidentally, some of this reward was then sent to Desalvo's wife. Evidence emerged later of a deal struck between Desalvo and Nassar before Desalvo confessed to the crimes.
At Bridgewater State Hospital, he met George Nassar. Then a scheme worked out with George Nassar.
This deal led to further speculation about Nassar's involvement in the Stranglings. The sole survivor of the Stranglers' attacks claimed it was actually Nassar, not Desalvo, who attacked her. Nassar is currently serving a life sentence at Walpole Prison. Recent developments in science have allowed DNA testing on one of the victims' bodies. A pubic hair found on 19-year-old Mary Sullivan was found not to belong to Sullivan or Desalvo. This newly obtained evidence proves that Desalvo was not guilty of this murder, and therefore it is highly doubtful that he was responsible for any of them.
And the one that we had done DNA with Mary Sullivan was the one that proved he said he did, but yet it proved he was a liar. He didn't.
After learning of this evidence, Casey Sherman, nephew of Mary Sullivan, said, "Without a doubt, Albert Desalvo was not the Boston Strangler. The real killer is still out there." Albert Desalvo was stabbed to death in 1973 at Walpole Prison. The murderers were never caught. Some believe that Desalvo's murder was an attempt to cover up Desalvo's knowledge about the Stranglings. Was Desalvo going to reveal the true identity of the Strangler? Now the truth about the Boston Strangler may never be known. Here's the story of the Strangler yet untold. The man who claims he murdered 13 women, young and old. The elusive Strangler, there he goes, where his wanderlust sends him, no one knows. He struck within the light of day, leaving not one clue astray. Young and old their lips are sealed, their secret of death never revealed. Even though he is sick in mind, he's much too clever for the police to find. To reveal his secret will bring him fame, but burden his family with unwanted shame. Today he sits in a prison cell, deep inside, only a secret he can tell. People everywhere are still in doubt. Is the Strangler in prison, or roaming about?
One Boston Strangler, there were several.
It was lunacy on the loose.
And it was the media that made the mess of it.